On December 7, 1941, disaster struck in Pearl Harbor. The Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is known as the day which will live in infamy. On December 8th, President Roosevelt gave a speech and declared war on Japan. The Japanese were already discriminated before Pearl Harbor. America then saw them as a public enemy of their rights and freedom. But what of the Japanese and Japanese Americans already in America? Well, you had several types of Japanese Americans. The Japanese immigrants who moved from Japan to America, and then their offspring which were born on American territory. After the attack, there was much more hate towards the Japanese. On February 19, 1942, President Roosevelt signed and issued Executive Order 9066, which allowed the relocation of Japanese Americans. This was the start of the internment camps. Internees were evacuated out of their own homes and were given a limit to what they could carry. This meant that lots of Japanese Americans lost lots of their property. These farms were also lost. Along with this, they were transported to temporary camps while their internment camps were being built. The quality of the temporary camp depended on the location. When they got to the internment camps, most were not completed yet, and most of the cabins were poorly built with fragile wood. Only a stove, one light, and several bed cots were in most of the cabins. The food they ate was cooked and served in a cafeteria style. The food varied. Most of the American public did not see what was wrong, as there was hundreds of different types of Japanese propaganda ads that stated that the Japanese Empire and Japanese Americans were mere actors pretending to be our allies. Propagandas also stated that they are backstabbers and rats. For example, at the end of one Popeye episode called Scrap the Japs, an entire crew of Japanese sailors were turned into rats and put into a cage while dragging them across the ocean. But the reasons for the internment camps ultimately was founded with racism. This in the U.S. had a history before the bombing of Pearl Harbor and World War II. Even since the 1860s, when Japanese immigrants came to America, there were groups that hated the Japanese. Even during elections for several government officials, they stated that they were anti-Japanese just so they would get more votes. It got so bad that America had a gentleman's agreement with Japan to stop the immigration of male Japanese immigrants to America. Only the picture wives and children were allowed to immigrate to America. But technically speaking, they weren't allowed to become naturalized citizens. After a law that prohibited Japanese farmers from owning land in California, most Japanese farmers lost their land completely. Most Japanese Americans tried to show their allegiance to America. In fact, some were furious, while others were more calm about it. Overall, they did not like it. A letter from an internee said, "We really have a feeling of isolation here. Of course, we have contact with the outside world daily, the newspapers, radio, Sears order and mail, yet we do not feel the pinch of war. Nor do we feel it directly. The war is watched, yet we don't feel a part of it. We feel isolated. Some feel the strong urge to get out, to do things, anything to get out of here. Well, this will really be all for now. Please take good care of yourself and write when you have the time. Sincerely, Fusa." This letter described that although they did have contact with the outside world, it just felt like something was wrong. That feeling that was wrong was that there were soldiers every day making sure that none of them escaped. They didn't feel like they were accepted by America, and that even if they managed to get out, they'd probably get mobbed by a group of anti-Japanese extremists. Therefore, they just felt that they were hated by the country and that they were treated like the enemy. The actor, Pat Morita, was an internee during World War II. At the time, he had a spinal tap and was moved from a hospital to an internment camp. This was an interview from Emmy TV Legends.
Yeah, that's a good question. What the motivation was of President Roosevelt for signing Executive Order 9066. Well, certainly there was a lot of political pressure to do so because of the anti-Japanese